in a way, it's a bold statement I'm about to say here, but a savior of the internet to a degree, because it's saving industries to well, for the better, I guess. Do you see what I mean by that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think what the blockchain kind of community would say is, and it's a little bit fanciful maybe, but there's some truth to it. The original underlying protocols of the internet were never really finished, and the argument is they were never really finished in the sense of being able to truly transact and share value on a peer-to-peer basis.
Yes, 100%.
Right, and that led to the kind of mega corporations that we have that have grown out of Silicon Valley. They're the biggest corporations that we've ever seen as a civilization because of the network effects and economies of scale. And blockchain, when it's deployed in its fullest and most decentralized way, kind of takes away that middleman, right? So in some sense, it's pretty threatening to existing business, or it could be. But equally, actually, if engaged with in the right way, and it's still very early, and there's lots of experimentation, there's a whole sliding scale of decentralization, can add significant value, not just to incumbents, right? I mean, I think it can to incumbents, but absolutely empower users, artists, musicians, etc., with another, I guess, channel or another outlet to market. In a very different way.
Power back into their hands, isn't it? And sort of saying, look, we've had a bit of an issue in the last few years, and it's disrupted in the right way. But I class it as the second layer of the internet because, well, this is blockchain I'm talking about. Because if you look at the likes of the Facebooks, the Googles, I keep reading things about there's going to be new search engines under blockchain that are going to revolutionize things. I mean, it's obviously early days, but it makes you think it's going to put data back in the beholder of the user rather than the centralized Facebooks and the Googles. And that's going to be interesting. What's going to happen with Google then in the future? What's going to happen with Facebook? Because people then go, hold on a minute, I've never been happy giving away my data to these people. And it's getting worse and worse, especially with the WhatsApp updates where they were saying they're going to be able to review data or along the lines of that. That's going to change. I think we're in this very early stage. We're holding it. We've got centralized, we've got decentralized. Where does it go? And where's the sort of the bridge between the two?
Yeah. No, 100% concur. I mean, I think the problem at the moment is with the decentralized stuff, the barriers to entry are too great. And frankly, Facebook and Google and Amazon do a fantastic job when it comes to user experience. Right? I mean, it's just so easy these days. But blockchain is and will catch up in terms of that usability. I have no doubt about that. It's still relatively early days to the point where it's irrelevant, right? I don't need to know what technology I'm using as a user. I just need to know that there's a benefit here, which is greater than and substantially greater than what I'm using now in order to make me switch, right? And so there's a technology catch-up piece. There's definitely a user experience piece. And there's an education piece, which is all happening. And like I say, I think it's happening probably most prominently at the moment with NFTs, people getting their head around NFTs.
I'll just say, I bet it happened when Tesla announced about the Bitcoin. Everyone's like, hold on, this is getting serious now. We need to wake up and smell the coffee a little bit here,
Well, that as well, thanks to Elon. Yeah, I mean, I think it's NFTs and it's crypto, right? Those are the two biggest kind of mass market use cases. The increasing number of businesses that are buying Bitcoin as a small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless of their treasury, high net worth individuals, private equity businesses, and just investors, putting money increasingly into crypto. And it's all education, right? People understanding how this thing works. Then I think you have the NFT piece, which is a slightly different audience, but there's definitely an investment play within NFTs.
Massively, yeah. Well, these NBA cards, this is just a whole new market happening in front of us, isn't it? But that kind of leads me on, actually, Stefan. Obviously, we're both from iGaming originally. Yep. Where does it go, the NFT arena, within iGaming? And how does blockchain, in a very top level here, fit into iGaming? Because as we both know, iGaming has a good plethora of technology, but at the same time, it interlinks to third-party companies. And just for example, for anyone who is watching and listening to this, people like Playtex, people bolt into people like that. How does the future of iGaming work or along line blockchain? Because it has to, and the same with NFT. A very top line. Obviously, don't want to go into too much detail, but how does that work? Because I haven't seen iGaming move in the right direction, but I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right, and it's a good question, right? I don't proclaim to know necessarily the exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but it will happen. I have no doubt about that. So I'm talking to lots of people in the industry, lots of operators, game developers, affiliates, etc. And I have been with my previous role as well, CEO of Funfair, and I'm noticing a noticeable change now, based on where we were 3 years ago. And I think that's because those industries or those companies that are a bit more forward looking are now beginning to seriously engage with the idea of looking at deploying blockchain. And what we're not going to see is operators rip up their tech stack and their relationships and suddenly replace it with a blockchain casino. A lot of those kind of first generation blockchain business models, I think, were flawed, as is often the case with a new technology. And now we're beginning to see a second wave of innovation, which is more focused and has product market fit baked into it, or much a much stronger product market fit than what we've seen before. Having said that, to your point, I'm a bit frustrated with the gambling industry for not being more progressive. As I've mentioned on a couple of occasions, I've seen the gaming industry mainly through startups rather than the big game companies, albeit we're seeing some of those franchises now coming onto the blockchain, being far more progressive than gambling. So where do I see it kind of moving? I think, we've seen crypto casinos. Again, cryptocurrencies is one aspect of the blockchain, and businesses like Coin Gaming, run by Tim Heath, massive, big now operators in their own right. We know there's a high crossover between crypto and gamblers and gamers, and as a payment means, it's very efficient, right? It solves a lot of problems. So I think that we will just continue to see growing. Regulation is the other big thing within gaming that I think makes operators a little bit more wary, right? Because they're heavily regulated and therefore, and often getting beaten around the head by regulators. They don't want to do anything that would jeopardize, their license or the relationship with the regulator. Having said that, I think things like NFTs, NFTs is not a means of payment. It's not, you're not going to be gambling per se with the NFT. It's something completely different. And if you look at the IP that game development companies have in the games themselves, there's an enormous amount of IP that they could distribute as NFTs. So
like you said about the lands, you could characters and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, within slots or within, casino-based games, for instance.
Interesting.
But I don't think what you can do is just take a asset, package it up, and sell it. You've got to gamify it. You've got to create scarcity. You've got to create value in those assets. And you can do. Within an NFT, you can have bonuses. So you could have a tradable bonus, or you could have a feature that unlocks content or levels within a game, that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise, that you own, that you could trade. Likewise, you could put a sports bet into an NFT, and there are businesses doing this, and you could trade that sports bet, or you could fractionalize that sports bet and have others buy into it.
That's insane. I can't get my head around that. So you have a bet, and I bet on Man United to win against Tottenham next weekend, for example, 2-1, and I sell that bet as an NFT.
Yeah, so typically it would probably work better with a longer term bet, right? And you're taking
they're going to win the cup, sort of thing.
They're going to win the cup. You take the odds today, and the odds might substantially increase or shorten or whatever they will do over that season. And if you've got that bet and you own that bet, you could then sell that bet on at any point.
That's amazing.
I mean,
I can see people going down the pub actually when the pub's open. And, I'll sell this bet to you. And then you go, yeah, go on then, 100 quid. Well, I could win quite a few thousand out of this. Oh God, I'll take the bet on it then. God, I can see this. Some good fun happening down the pub there.
Indeed. So I mean, I think NFTs. Yeah, I'm amazed they're not being explored more. Maybe they are. Maybe some of the big guys are looking at. Poker is another great example. You could create scarcity in. Well, you could run poker games actually with NFTs if you wanted to, and you'd be able to trade the cards. It wouldn't be a true game of poker, but you could kind of gamify the whole experience.
So it's getting people really into that platform, whether it be because the big market we work with a lot of clients at the moment is social gaming. And with social gaming, there's an aspect of leaderboards and people being influenced by the other players to put money down because someone else has been winning or they've had a position increase, should we say, which creates that influence, which could then somehow could be tied to an NFT along the way to say, right, you could secure your position or something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking out the box, but it just makes me think about how big social gaming is now with sportsbook or within the casino, and then how you bring in, like you said about the NFTs. It's the next level, isn't it? Because that's the key for any of these games or platforms, especially in iGaming, is LTV, lifetime value. How can you keep that player in there, and how do you keep them interested? Because I've always looked at casinos, jump in, jump out, and if it's been a good week for me, for example, if I'm a gambler, then I'm more likely to put more money down. But if there's more of a way of gamifying it, like you clearly said, then actually you're changing that whole casino iGaming perception all over with a new technology.
I think you are. I mean, I think there's also more disruptive ways to look at it, because actually, I mean, I collect various bits of kind of artwork that form part of a broader collection. And within that collection, you have a community and you have scarcity. So certain bits are more valuable than other bits. But it's part kind of collectible, it's part art, it's part investment, it's part gamble, because you don't actually know whether the thing is going to go up or not. And so there's almost a completely different category of gambling, or it has an aspect of gambling that is being created, right? Which isn't just taking existing games and deploying NFTs or DeFi. It's creating something completely different, which does engage with a different audience, a more millennial audience.
I was going to say, what is the age group on this? I mean, I would have said millennial, but I haven't looked at artwork and stuff like that. That's going to catapult into stratosphere with different age groups, surely. And then I guess millennials is your default, I suppose, because they're here now. They get it. They're into it. They're the first breed of that generation.
I mean, I would say it's quite wide actually, the range. But if you're looking at, you've got your high-end artwork, which is probably slightly older. Albeit, having said that, a lot of people have made a lot of money out of crypto from getting in early. But when you look at your MBAs, you look at your big kind of collectible, gamified NFT collections. It's younger. It skews more male. It's really the demographic that operators are trying to fall over themselves to get hold of because they're not interested in traditional casino games.
I can see operators that are watching this are going to be like, okay, right, NFT, quick, pick up the phone to marketing. Well, let's get these NFTs sorted out. The other guy is saying, what is an NFT? watch this video. Stefan's the man to go to. Well, I think it's awesome. It's just crazy when it's happening now. It's happening in front of us, and it almost makes me feel what's the next industry that's going to be hit with this? It's going to go around everywhere. I mean, there's so many options available to create and to monetize. But for me, I'm very two-dimensional. I'm on iGaming all the time in my brain, but also because we now focus within our agency in recruitment, providing services for blockchain. But particularly, we're really trying to focus on our sort of our heart where it's at, and that's NFT and DeFi are two sort of areas that we're trying to go into, more so.
Yeah. I mean, it's, as you say, it's spreading across many different industries. I'm doing a project at the moment in the fashion industry.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. It's a kind of high-end designer working with an artist and having a beautiful, very high concept short film as the NFT itself. So very exclusive, limited run. And that film and that NFT is paired with a physical item, which again is a limited edition from the designer.
You're getting me excited about this now. I love it.
So, I mean, and that's just the beginning. There's real world application for NFTs. I know people are working on fractionalized ownership of properties, for instance.
So going back to fashion, because then you have the collections that are coming out then, I guess. So if you say for London Fashion Week, this is our 2022 collection. And then within bits of that will be NFT, to make it really high value, I guess. And this will probably increase value on things going forward because it's traceable. It's got a stamp to it. It's got a link of authenticity linked to it, which will put that value up, I think, going forward.
I mean, so the project I'm working on is the longer term aim is to create something which helps counterfeiting of designer items because of the proof.
Mass market, right? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
As in counterfeiting is what I'm saying. That's it's one of the probably biggest problems for a designer, I'd imagine. Their bags and brand being counterfeited globally.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you had an NFT which was attached to that, it provides authenticity. You can look at the provenance of items. I mean, diamonds, where have diamonds come from? Are they, ethically sourced? All that sort of stuff. So massive potential. And most industries actually, I would say, are looking at NFTs, or at least the most obvious ones. And you're going to see a lot more exploding onto the scene, in the coming weeks and months.
Well, you heard it here first. Everyone remember Stefan Kovich. Okay, remember this video. You heard it here first. This is what's happening. Stefan, that was amazing. Honestly, it's almost to the point where this stuff is happening in front of us, but it's happening so fast. Normally, things go a little bit slower. Like you got the internet came out, and it was very slow. You had video, then audio, or the other way around, and things took its time. But with blockchain, things are really developing into DeFi, as one vertical, NFT in another, and it just seems to be moving at a very, very rapid pace. And it almost begs to believe, like, what's next? You almost, for me anyway, I like crypto. I'm buying into bits of crypto here and there. Now I'm looking at NFTs, like, okay, well, is this, where do you go? But that's another story. But yeah, mega interesting. That's for another video.
That is another video. Yeah, that's a whole other video. I mean, having been in the space a while, it's, these things have been chugging along, and no one, it's just not been in the headlines. But I still think, we're still this kind of protocol Cold War level in terms of creating fast, cheap blockchains is the next big hurdle to overcome before it really goes mass market. And it's happening, right? I mean, it's absolutely happening. So the guys who, the blockchain that NBA use is called Onflow. Onflow is a new blockchain, only launched a couple of months ago. NBA is their kind of flagship client. It's fast, right? It's cheap.
That's what it's about.
On-ramp, and that's why it's done so well, right? So I think, in the next 2 or 3 years, what you'll find is probably a dozen or so enterprise-ready blockchains, which some will be very specialist, some will be more DeFi, some will be more NFT, some will be more generalist, but they will all have, significant throughput, and they'll be cheap, and there'll be an ability to interoperate between them. And at that point, you remove nearly all of the friction.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why I've put a little bit of cash here and there on Polkadot, and because I do see that was the problem with these chains communicating with one another, or even just having one layer, even Ether and V2. It's the transactional behavior, the speed is still quite slow. And if you're looking at this at scale, to get these volumes of transactions, no matter what sort of application you're running, is difficult. And now what these chains are trying to do is one, like you exactly said, is reduce. And this is what's really got me going. Is I'm like, okay, well, you've got a clear problem, a bottleneck of speed and cost. You can overcome that with interlinking chains. You bring your cost down, you've got that speed there, and the scale is obviously naturally follows. So it's mega interesting. It really is.
It is. Polkadot, I think, is not that's financial advice, but yeah, I think is an interesting one to.
Good. Are you backing that for me there? Here you go. High five.
I've got a bit of Polkadot.
There you go.
I am. I've got a bit of Polkadot.
It's good.
I mean, I'm still long on Ethereum just because of its developer base. It's
me
massive.
too. That's my primary, only because I've even got, I should have worn it still. I've got an Ethereum. I wore it when I first met you, actually, on that crypto curry club, didn't I?
Respect.
Yeah, I'm from a technology background myself. So for me, it was all about looking at what's the base platform next to Bitcoin that has something that you can obviously build upon, that people are putting all their hedges on. And that was Ethereum. It seems to be doing its job well. So all good.
It does.
Stefan, thank you ever so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was really, really mesmerizing. And I hope everyone who watches this is mesmerized. And I think one good thing to kind of end up on, if you don't mind as well, is anyone who's watching that wants to ask any questions. I personally feel it's really good to interact with people, just to kind of get mindset out there. Also to link with like-minded people like ourselves that are really interested in this new wave of technology. Leave comments. Let's have a conversation on this, and pick our brains. And I'm sure if Stefan's up for that, then we can have a little chat on some comments and feedback where we can.
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free if anyone wants to ping me with any questions. Very happy to answer those.
Bless you. Thanks ever so much, Stefan. I really appreciate it, and great to see you again.
Absolutely, pleasure. We'll speak soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again for coming.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.